Okay, we've got the first exam set up for y'all on Friday at either 11 or 12, and I've got a room set aside. It is HU011 from 11 to 2 o'clock on Friday. So if you want to come in at 11 and go ahead and get the thing knocked off, that's fine. If you want to come in at 12 during your regular class time and get it knocked off, then it's fine. You want to come in early, maybe you want to come in a little bit later. However you want to do it, but it's going to be downstairs in 011 Humanities. I'll make sure that I've got signs posted on the classroom doors, and I'll have it posted in Blackboard as well. So that's the first piece on this. Second piece on this, the exam, you've basically got chapter 1, chapter 2, you've got the Rockville Court piece in here, and then I've also posted midterm study guides in here, or study terms in here as well. So I'll go ahead and pull up the study terms real quick, and we can go ahead and start taking a look at this. Now basically the way that this is going to work is there's a decent batch of things that deal with the articles, probably a good 40% of the exam. About 40% is going to come from terms, and then the other, well, maybe about 30% from terms. 10-15% of it is going to come from the court visit, and then 10-15% is going to come from the chapter questions that are at the bottom of the outlines. The court visit stuff is only going to come from the paper that has the specifics about the court visit on it. So even if you weren't there, that's all you have to know. So why don't we start with terms? Do y'all have any questions about any of the terms that are posted from chapter 1? Anything at all? Go ahead. Jordan.
What do you mean with the who?
Who? Do y'all remember when we were talking about the who's from the Declaration of Independence? Go ahead, Hobbs. Who?
Do you mean like the framer, like who they were talking to?
Yeah, that was one. Who was it written for?
Yeah, who was it written
My
for?
favorite beer, ale.
What?
Ale, mail, and stale. That's the
Oh.
Petco, like the gimmick.
Well, there's more to it. Now, there were 3 who's. Who wrote it? Who was it written for? And who was it written about? So who wrote it?
Washington, Georgia.
TJ.
Thomas Jefferson is actually given credit for having written the Declaration. And granted, I had given y'all what was it? The Schoolhouse Rock video. And if you remember the Schoolhouse Rock video, it mentioned some other people that were given credit for it, Sherman and some of these other people, but Jefferson is considered kind of the father of the Declaration, just like Madison is considered kind of the father of the Constitution. Who was it written about?
Oh, wasn't it George Washington, or at least I know like the second part for like presidential.
King.
Who was it written about?
King
It was
of
actually
France.
written about the King of England.
England.
Yeah, not France, King of England. And how do you know that they were referring to the King of England? What was it that the Declaration said over and over again? It said the word he over and over. He endeavored to prevent. He obstructed. It mentions he, and they're referring to the king. There was also that quote, and I'll try and pull this up really quick, because if we're talking about the who's, we're talking about the Declaration of Independence. There was a quote that I had read to y'all that dealt with this actually kind of good, and bear with me as I find this, because
21.
it was up at the very top of page 21. And you'll notice up here it says, and I read this off to you, and this would probably be a good thing. The Declaration forcefully asserts the equality of men and the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, a phrase that euphemistically expresses an inherent right to own private property. It asserts that these rights are not granted by humans but by God. They must be defended by government for enjoyment by each of its members. When the government can no longer defend these rights, or when it actively threatens them, the people have the right to alter or abolish that government and replace it with another that is better able to do so. So remember on this, who wrote it was Jefferson. Who was it written about? It was written about the king. Who was it written for was actually for France, because they were looking for allies. And if you put this together, this quote, basically the Declaration was a legal justification for separation from Great Britain, but it also gets into life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which I know we talked about, and it also gets into this idea that you have a right to overthrow your government if it's not defending these rights for you. So kind of keep that in mind. What other questions have y'all got from the terms?
111.
Yeah.
111 is actually a number that I need to change. It's actually 115, I believe, from the outline, and it was the number of peaceful, it's getting ready to be the number of peaceful midterm and presidential elections in American history. It's just, when I first typed this up, we've had a number of elections since. But every 4 years is the presidential election. In between the presidential election are the midterm elections, and we've had 115 peaceful midterm and presidential elections in American history. Anything else that jumps out for y'all? Go ahead.
What qualifies like as peaceful? Like, can you elaborate on like when you talk about
Well,
peaceful?
we didn't really get into a whole lot regarding peaceful, but basically the country has respected the results of the elections.
Okay.
So some years the Republicans win, some years the Democrats win, but the sun still comes up the next day or eventually, you know, that kind of a thing. And it's not like we've had the military have to come in and kind of keep the order or enforce something. Yeah,
So 115 is just talking about the peaceful,
midterm and presidential elections, yeah. So it is, that's really the thing. They
Okay.
respect the results of the elections. What else have y'all got up here?
now the articles in the Constitution, which ones do you want us to remember?
We'll get to that. Let's just focus on chapter 1 first and kind of take it in order. Do you have any other terms from chapter 1 that jump out? Y'all know what the presidential elections were, right?
You just go over everything.
Well, no. Y'all have to ask the questions on this. I'm not just going to go over everything. But what do y'all remember about the presidential elections?
Bush was
Bush. Go ahead, zoom in on her since she's talking. Go ahead.
nothing.
The Bush versus Gore.
What happened with the Bush versus Gore?
Yeah.
They, do you want to answer? My answer?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. That the popular vote and the electoral college vote were different, and
Yeah.
they had to recount Florida 80,000 times because
Majority.
of the discrepancy in the votes and stuff like that.
More individual people in the popular vote voted for Gore than Bush, but Bush won the presidency because of the Electoral College. So that's basically the first place to get started. Did anybody ever get a majority of the popular vote? No. In fact, a majority of people voted against both Bush and Gore. So that actually takes us to these what were the other 2 presidential elections that I talked to y'all about? Because Bush was the first one.
I was killing someone.
It was, well, what were the 2 elections before 2000?
Clinton.
No. Wait. The game is wrong.
Then
So it's every 4 years.
Yeah, hold up.
Okay, 96 and 92.
up my math.
Who won in 92 and 96?
Clinton.
Clinton won in 92 and 96. And if you go back and you look at this, did Clinton ever get a majority? No. In all 3 of those elections, in 1992 and 1996 and 2000, a majority of the American people voted against the man that became president. You hear about it in terms of Bush. You don't always hear about that in terms of Clinton. Did Clinton get more votes than the other guy? Yes. But did a majority of the people ever vote for Bill? No. And if you go back through American history, I had brought this up within the context of majority rule. We don't always have a majority system because the president sometimes doesn't even get half of the vote. So kind of keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Y'all have any other questions about anything from chapter 1? Go ahead.
Just a question about the Bush versus Gore. Was it because he lost in his own state?
That's right. Gore lost in his own. If he would have won his own home state of Tennessee, none of the other stuff would have mattered. He would have been president of the United States. And I did. I asked y'all the question, what state should you always win? And the state that you should always win is actually not California, although you might want to, or Texas, because they're big. But it's your home state because they know you the best. Yeah, that's a really nice catch. Any other questions from chapter 1? I think freedom, order, and equality are kind of straightforward. Are y'all familiar with initiative and recall?
yeah.
Recall is like if you don't like the elected
You want to
official,
remove-
then you can just vote to overthrow them.
A vote to overthrow them. Okay, that's a good start to it. Go ahead.
When you want to remove somebody from the office.
Yes. How does a recall work? How do you get it set up? Anybody? Go ahead.
I don't know if I'm 100%, but don't you have to start by signatures?
You do. the idea behind a recall, and recall is not something that is used in federal offices. Recall is used in state offices. And if you remember on this, you've actually got to get a percentage of signatures from registered voters, and you're asking to recall, or Rob, to use your word, overthrow in a way the current governor, for example, or a current representative, for example, a current state or local elected official. Now, in this, they don't have to have committed a crime. They could just be doing a bad job. But you've got to collect the signatures. The State Board of Elections will verify that these are registered voters, and then they'll have a special election specifically to remove this person from office. Do y'all remember the example that we went over in class?
Oh, Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger, yeah, it was the California election. And do you remember some of the people that were on the recall ballot?
Porn-
A stripper.
Porn star. Why do you say that so happy? I don't understand.
I just remember that.
Zoom in on her. She just remembers the porn star. Go ahead. Anybody else?
There was a stripper with only one name.
There was Angeline, the stripper. There was the porn star that was on there, Mary Carey Cook, if you
And,
remember.
Oh, that like
short singer.
The short singer.
the
No.
yoga guy with the crazy hair.
Richard Simmons, and that may not have really been him, but with a name like Richard Simmons in California, I'm thinking people are going to think it's him. Gary Coleman, the short actor, was on
I
there.
mean a short singer.
The short singer?
No.
Schwarzenegger.
Oh, Schwarzenegger. Yes, that one. He was, yes. And ultimately, he was elected governor, if you remember. Can you think of anybody else who was on there? Larry Flint, thank you. Larry Flint, the porn guy, the porn publisher, I should say, and defender of the First Amendment was on there.
Journalist.
What's that?
Somebody was journalist.
You could argue that Larry Flint is a journalist. Other people would not maybe be quite so diplomatic. But the point of it is that if you got a select number of signatures, a percentage of signatures of registered voters, then you could conceivably run. So there are two questions on there. What were the two questions on the recall ballot?
Who wants to? If you want to remove this person or not?
The first question is, do you want to remove or recall this person from office, whoever it is? And in this case, it was Gray Davis in California. If you answered no, then you were done. If you answered yes, what's the second question?
Who wants you to be there?
Who do you want to replace this particular person? And this is where Schwarzenegger came in, and Schwarzenegger was like the fifth or sixth name on the list, and Schwarzenegger was elected via the recall. This thing cost, I think, $30-something million, and they got the governor to step in, and this can be done at any point in many states around the country. What's the difference between recall and an initiative? Go ahead.
Isn't one initiative when you like force a popular vote called a plebiscite? When you you sign a petition within the populace and you
Yes.
force a popular vote, if the state government, I think it is, or just in general.
You've lost me completely on
Right,
this.
right,
Let's go in a different
but, like,
direction.
my
Don't
point-
zoom in.
yeah.
How does it? What does a recall? What does an initiative do? Anybody?
Then you want
Isn't
to
that it?
Something
You
about
change
that.
it
Something
something
else.
else.
Yeah.
you want
propose a law?
to change.
You
the
propose a law,
Yeah.
and what?
You vote on it.
Yeah, you.
If like it's put on the ballot, like if somebody.
How do you put it on the ballot?
Petition.
Don't you literally just put it, like you go to your office and it gets put on the ballot?
You go to your office and it gets put on the ballot.
You
That's
petition
what
for
It's
it.
just like the recall. You've got to collect signatures.
Yes.
Okay.
You collect signatures, and Juliana, you're right. You're basically drafting a law. And I had brought this up in class within the context of, okay, where do you go to get a law passed? Well, you got to go to the legislature, you got to go to the mayor, you got to go to city council, and sometimes these people aren't going to agree with you. But if you're serious about a particular law, and then you go and you collect the signatures with your proposed law in there, and then ultimately you take it to the State Board of Elections, when this is verified, they will put a yes or no question of your law on the next ballot. Not a special election, but the next time they have elections, it will be included. If a majority of people vote no, it gets killed. If a majority of people vote yes, it becomes the law of the state. And so what is this an example of?
Popular vote.
What is this
Direct
an example
democracy.
of what?
Direct democracy.
Direct democracy. This is an example of direct democracy. This is, and both of these are, because this is the people collecting the signatures, the people going to the Board of Elections, the people removing or passing laws that politicians won't deal with, This is the idea that all of us are in this together, and this is kind of straight from the outline. Let me deal with articles real quick, and let me jump back into Blackboard just a skosh here, and you'll notice up here under the articles, there were not that many in this first chapter, so that's a good thing. Catholic school teacher and the Texas cheerleaders. The one that I have not included in there yet is the one that was dealing with the mattress. And I'm going to make sure that that gets put in there. The one that was dealing with the lady that had filed the rape charges, if you remember, she carried around the mattress. And then the guy who ultimately was exonerated attempted to sue the school, I should say, because she had basically, they had allowed her to run down his character under Title IX. But the Catholic school teacher should be pretty straightforward. Are y'all comfortable with this case? Y'all want to tell me anything about this case? Who was the woman involved?
Teacher, Catholic teacher.
Catholic teacher. What was her
I don't remember
name?
her name. But she got pregnant.
The more, listen, when I give y'all these short answer questions, I give you points based on what you give me. So the more specifics that you give me, the more points that I can give you. That's kind of the way it goes. And when you get these short answer questions, if you only write 2 or 3 sentences, and I'm going to make sure that I say this on the camera, if you only write 2 or 3 sentences, it's not going to be enough. Did you want to say? Michelle McCusker was the Catholic school teacher, and she got pregnant out of wedlock, right? What happened when she told the school?
They fired her
They did. They fired her. Why exactly did they fire her?
because she signed a contract saying that she was not going to do that.
She was not going to do that. Okay, that narrows it down a little bit. What exactly was it that go ahead, anybody.
She was gonna like uphold the practices that they try and instill in the
She was going to uphold the core teachings of the Catholic faith. So did it specifically say that she wouldn't have sex out of wedlock? No. But did it imply that this would not be allowed? Well, yeah, strongly implied, you could argue. So ultimately, she was fired because she broke the contract. And we talked about this within the context of, okay, if I'm a Catholic school parent, I'm sending my kids there for reading, writing, arithmetic, you remember the 3 R's, plus morals or religion, a 4th R, religion. And they would not be getting the religious or the moral component if she's pregnant out of wedlock. If I'm the Catholic school principal, I'm worried about enrollment. Bless you. I'm worried about people pulling their kids. Because again, if this gets out, this could be scandalous. Why did she sue the school though? What was her beef?
Because if it's the man beside the women, nobody can find out.
She sued for discrimination, absolutely. And her argument was if a man did the exact same thing, just like you said, it's going to be very difficult for somebody to know. There is biology that's involved in this that she's going to show. Did she win?
No.
Why? There were 2 reasons.
The contract.
She breached the contract. She clearly breached the contract. If she wants to do things like that, you could be cynical about it and say, go teach in the public schools. You don't have to worry about those religion clauses. Regarding her discrimination, what was the deal?
She told on herself.
She did tell on herself. And not only was it that she told on herself, but the argument is, or was, if you remember, that not all women that have sex out of wedlock are actually going to get pregnant. Which means there would be men that would be getting away with this, but there would also be women getting away with this. And if in fact, or because of the fact that she told and nobody else told on themselves, that means that the school did actually have to act. It wasn't discrimination. So keep that in mind. I posted a video in there, I believe, from my former intern. And if you've got questions about how to answer some of these short answer questions, please go in there and take a look at that. Did I post that video from her?
Yeah, on your YouTube?
Yeah, video links, yeah. And actually, Sarah's the one down here, and there it is, the Catholic school teacher by Sarah. She breaks this down really, really good, and she's got it in writing. She's got some graphic images in there. I mean, that's one of my favorite ones, and we spent a good amount of time on it the very first day. So, well, the second day maybe, but you kind of get the idea. You'll notice up here the Texas cheerleaders. Oh, and the new Catholic contract. You remember what that was? The new controversy?
The brother of the teacher?
The brother of the teacher. Go ahead, Hobbs.
With the woman with the gay son.
Yeah, and the argument is that if you're actually condoning that lifestyle, then in fact that's not upholding core teachings of the Catholic faith, and I believe the Catholic teacher in question in the article resigned because in fact she was going to be fired, or he was going to be fired, I forget which. But take a look at that. What was the deal with the Texas cheerleaders? Anybody?
Oh, here you go.
Texas cheerleaders, you remember they were the high school girls? And they were basically displaying Bible verses, absolutely, before the football games. How would they post them? How would they
Banner and the sign that they run through.
the team would run on the field, and there was a banner that was there, and it would be gargantuan, and people could see this from the crowd. If God is with us, then who could be against us, kind of a thing. And they would even have the scripture reference in there too, so you knew where it was coming from. What happened with this? Anybody?
That happened to the public as
So,
well.
someplace in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
A lobby group in Wisconsin.
Do y'all remember the group from Wisconsin?
What was the name? I forgot. I know it was.
Freedom from Religion Foundation from Wisconsin sued and said that the cheerleaders shouldn't be allowed to do this. So what did the school do in order to avoid a lawsuit?
They got scared and they told them to stop doing that.
They told them to stop doing that. Did the school get sued?
Yes.
Yeah.
By who?
Cheerleaders.
The cheerleaders sued. And did they say that they wanted their freedom of religion?
No, it's freedom of
It's
It was
speech.
actually freedom of speech that they sued over. And in fact, if you go back and you look at this, the community was very much in favor of this. They brought signs to the games. Facebook was overwhelmingly in favor. Even Texas Governor Perry spoke out about this. Now, when you go back and you look at this, did the girls ultimately win their case?
Yes.
They did. It's actually legal to do this, and they came down on the side of speech, although we're waiting right now to see what the appeal is going to be, but it looks like this is going to continue to go forward, and other Texas schools jumped in as well. Both of these two articles, with the cheerleaders and the Catholic school teacher, they do not say who won, but the Texas cheerleaders did win, and they're allowed to do this. And do you remember what the problems were? Like, why the school could make an argument that they shouldn't be allowed to do this?
Because they represented the school with the cheerleader uniform.
Public.
They represented the school with their cheerleader uniforms. What else?
It was a school event.
At a school football game, a school event on school grounds, and it made it look like
school was endorsed.
the school was endorsing religion, and under the establishment clause, they shouldn't be doing that. What was the cheerleaders' argument as far as why they should be allowed to beyond freedom of speech? We're using our own money to make these signs. We're doing this on our own time to make these signs. Nobody is requiring us to do this. This is just what we believe in. And in fact, the community was very, very much in favor. So kind of keep that in mind. That covers these. And these two videos, one of them kind of breaks down the most recent ruling. The other one breaks down their argument kind of at the time of the article. So you'll get two different perspectives on it, but you'll also see some video of like how they do the football games and things, so it'll give you a little bit to think about. But take a look at all of these. I mentioned to you that the chapter questions are on this. And you'll notice down at the very bottom for all of these chapters, there are a series of chapter questions. We're really only going to have about 12 or 15 of these for this first exam, so I don't think I'm going to pull any of them. Did y'all have any questions about any of these?
What is politic for crossing height?
Yes. It's the,
That politic for Drossen Height, and I'm not even sure if that's the right way to say it, but you'll notice in here, and this is actually from page 8.
I think it's people disenchanted through politics.
It is. It's the idea basically that people are kind of moving away from being part of the system. And you'll notice up there it says, most nations seem to have experienced a flight from politics, or what the Germans call Politikverdrossenheit, a weakness about its debates, disbelief about its claims, skepticism about its results, cynicism about its practitioners. So basically when people become disenchanted with the system, Politikverdrossenheit happens. And that's basically what we're looking at. Maybe they're protesting against the system, they're not believing in the system, disrespecting the system, but you kind of get the idea. Anybody with anything else from chapter 1?
I just have a question. So you said all of those chapter questions will be on the test? You said
No. All of them are fair game for the test. I'm not going to put them all on there. Again, the breakdown is probably going to be about 40%, maybe 30% articles, 30% terms, about 10 to 15% from the court, and then about 10 to 15% from the chapter questions, and that's roughly add up to 100. So that court piece is going to be a little bit bigger because so many of y'all went, but even that court piece is just going to come from the notes. What questions do y'all have from chapter 2? And have you stopped it and restarted it? Could you stop it and restart it? How many minutes did it go?